Greetings and welcome to another episode of What the F Over from CopBLue. Today we're going to be interviewing Terry Gainey, who's the current president of the South Carolina chapter of the Fraternal Order of Police. That's pretty cool.
That's a lot to say.
That's a lot to say. So let me just ask you this, Terry. How long were you in law enforcement?
I began my career in 1986.
Right here in Darlington, right? In Darlington, South Carolina, which is where we're one part of CopBLue is out of, but the video part anyway. And how long did you stay in Darlington?
Until 1992.
1992.
1992, I went to Hartsville, which is still in Darlington County.
Right.
And then in 2004, I retired from active law enforcement and began my third career as a coroner's investigator.
Oh, okay. So you work for our current coroner here in Darlington County, who is Todd Hardy. I'm going to give him a little shout out there. Who's been the coroner for freaking, I don't know, a long time.
Yep.
Like 20 plus years?
20 plus, yeah.
Wow. You think he's doing a good job, or you think nobody else wants to do it?
Yeah, well, maybe both.
well, we'll make sure that doesn't hit the cutting room floor. Yeah, Todd's a good guy, does a good job, and of course, when I was active in law enforcement, we did a lot of work with them, and we have nothing but tremendous respect for the coroner's office here in Darlington County. They do a great job, and we appreciate them. I like to start off all of my different segments that I use. The particular philosopher for every segment, and the one I always use, of course, is Marcus Aurelius. And I've said before that I think that he was a brilliant man who was way before his time, and a great leader and a great philosopher. And the quote that I'm going to use today is, "Here's the rule to remember in the future: when anything tempts you to be bitter, not this is a misfortune, but to bear this worthily is good fortune." So basically what that says to me is what we do every day in law enforcement, past, present, and future, is that we bear up under the horrific things that we have to deal with. And that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today is mental health in law enforcement, and how the South Carolina FOP helps the officers out there that are in trouble, and just what their thoughts are on leadership in general. And at the end, we're going to ask Terry Gainey here how he managed to be able to buck up so well and do so well under all of that stress for all of these years. So let me just ask you about that. How do you think we're doing in leadership in law enforcement?
I think leadership.
Man, just be honest, just blow it out there, tell it how it is.
Leadership as a general rule sucks.
It does, doesn't it? It's terrible. It really is horrific. And the thing is that, my opinion, and I'll throw mine out there. And of course, this is my show. I can say whatever I want, pretty much. But my thing is just like this. I think that our leaders are so much into doing for themselves, they forget what they're supposed to be doing, which is A, protecting the public they're supposed to be protecting, and B, doing stuff for their troops that they're supposed to be leading. If you can't even lead yourself, if you're so concerned with your own devices that you're not concerned with the agency and the people who are actually doing the work where the rubber meets the road, I think you got a problem. And that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear yours.
Gosh, that's amazingly, I think that we think alike there.
I know we do.
It's very obvious that leadership is lacking, and for a lot of the reasons that you just simply said. You have the so-called leaders who are out there who are more interested in what one or two people may have to say about a particular segment or some scenario, and there's not enough balance between that, looking out for the people you serve or the people who serve under you.
Right.
And I don't see a change coming in the foreseeable future.
Why do you think that is?
I think the politics of it has just kind of wiped out the doing right part of it.
I agree with that 100%. And I think that when you have, and I do not want to get into the politics of it, because, you can't not get into the politics of it. But let me just say this, without me throwing any one particular politician under the bus, and I could name several. I'm being honest. I certainly could by name, but I'm not going to. My whole point of the matter is that they're so interested in very specific, very selective law enforcement, which is well, you can do whatever else that you want to do in any other neighborhood you want to do it in, but you can't do it in mine. Does that sound familiar?
Sounds very familiar.
And I think that's, a lot of chiefs and a lot of sheriffs and law enforcement in general have a tendency to want to stay away from that squeaky wheel, because that's what everybody hears, and that's what gets the wheel the fastest. That's what gets the grease, because it's squeaky, and no one likes the sound of that person that's constantly irritating, that constantly has a problem. No matter how well things are going, there's always an issue, even when there's not. They create one, so to speak. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Why do you think that those people who are so outrageous in both in politics and the public get so much time in front of the mic, so to speak?
Lack of compromise, more so than anything else, is nothing is more important than my specific problem. And whatever it takes for me to get my specific problem in front of that mic and heard is what I'm willing to do.
And it doesn't matter if they have to lie, cheat, and steal to get it done.
Doesn't matter at all, as long as they are front and center.
So the reason that I ask you this is I'm leading up to this, which is, how do you think that affects the mental health and well-being of our rank and file officers that are out there every day trying to do a good job, trying to do what they're supposed to do, when they have to worry about, enforcement of one particular individual or what, because if you mess with this particular person one way or another, that there's going to be some static about it.
Well, when the goal continually changes, you never know that you're meeting the goal, that you're never meeting the standard. The standard may be fine today, but tomorrow's standard's going to change, and you are constantly berated, you're constantly worried, you're constantly wondering, what can I do, or did I do that is wrong or right today, and will it be wrong or right tomorrow?
I agree. And one of the things that, when I hired officers from other agencies that came to work for me, that, I would call people to the office randomly over time, and it was not, I've called very, very few people to my office because they're in trouble. It would have had to have been something very, very monumentally big for me to call someone to my office to crawl them out about. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it happens from time to time, but that's what I had, good supervisors for, was to take care of that long before it ever got to me. If it got to me, it was a major big deal. But my approach to leadership was that I was constantly reaching out to these guys, and if they came to my office, it was like, oh, what did I do wrong? You don't have to do anything wrong to come to my office. Maybe I just want to talk to you, or maybe I want to call you, or whatever, check up on you. That's, I learned that in the Marine Corps. Being constantly aware of what's going on with your troops. I mean, I know you were in command at one time or another in your career. What was your approach to it?
My approach was that I fixed my problems. If it made it to the chief, then I failed as a supervisor. I mean, and there were many, many times whenever issue came up that, the chief may call me in as a supervisor and say, Officer X just did this or that, we need to deal with it. Now, it's too late, chief, I've already dealt with it.
Right, I agree with you.
And to a fault occasionally, because whenever I can think of one particular time that the officer, he screwed up, but I took care of it. By the time the chief got around and wanted to take care of it, then it was a done deal. It was something that all I had to do was say, I've already fixed that issue.
Right.
If you don't like the way I fix that issue, then you have an issue with me.
See, that's my
no
thing.
longer with him.
If I trust you to be a supervisor, then I trust you to use your judgment to deal with the problem. Now, if you turn a blind eye to it, then I got a problem with that. But if you've managed it, if you've corrected it, then hey, that's what supervisors are there for. And that's one of the great things about surrounding yourself with people who can get the job done in the way you want them to. Not every chief or sheriff is that lucky. I will say this, I was very lucky to be surrounded by the people I was surrounded by. They did a good job for me, and they made me look much better than I did in reality, which is always a good thing. So a lack of leadership like that, a lack of cohesive leadership, do you think that affects the mental health and welfare and well-being of the
I
troops.
think it goes back to what's right today may not be right tomorrow.
And that's, an ever-shifting goal, or an ever-shifting, oh, what's okay today and is not okay tomorrow, or what was okay yesterday is not okay today. How do we fix that, Terry? I mean, what can we do as far as, since we're removed from that now, because we are, and of course you've got a great, opportunity in your presidency of the FOP to be able to try and at least push forward good change. I mean, what would be some of the things that you'd like to see happen as far as, education, leadership education, training? What was some of the things you'd like to see?
Yeah, I think that the thing that has always bugged me more than anything else is that shifting goal. So some standardization. If promotions, let's say, if a promotion is going to be based solely on what the chief or sheriff wants, then lay that out clearly. That this is what I'm going to do because I'm the boss and I choose to.
Right.
I can accept that. Most people, most officers can accept that. They may not like it, but they can accept it.
Right.
Where I have issues overall is when there is some written procedure that continually changes. Let's say, for instance, we're going to promote someone to sergeant. And last month, when we promoted someone to sergeant, it was a college degree was required.
Right.
Next month, because the particular officer I have in mind to promote doesn't have a college degree, we're going to say, or equivalent.
Oh, that just goes away.
And then it always changes. It always changes.
That is just one of the things that just really, truly rubs my rhubarb the wrong way. And that is, it's as a leader. And, when I hired people that had a great deal of experience and brought them in, I had a guy who had been on a year, and he wanted to get promoted to corporal, and I had guys that I had hired within the several month period that were hired after him that were much more experienced, much more prepared, much further down the road as far as being corporal material, and I promoted him, and I don't think that kid's ever forgiven me for it. And because it was his right. And just because you sit your butt in a chair for a day longer than somebody else does not necessarily make you more capable of doing the job. So I guess how complicated it can be, because I know I've been there. But I think you should pick the best person for the job. But at the same time, what my issue is if you already know who you're going to pick, just pick them.
Just pick them.
Don't go through this whole kangaroo, goofy bull crap of, this guy, oh, well, you got a chance. And, administrators do this too. You'll have a position that come open, like a chief's position come open, and that administrator will promise this position to an officer that's already there. Oh, yeah, you're going to be the next chief. You're going to be the next chief. And then, they're in the next room on the phone calling this other person saying, oh, yeah, you're the next chief. And, that destroys morale.
It does.
It really, really does. And I can understand how there'd be a problem. And I'm a big fan of promoting from within. I truly am. Whenever you can, whenever you have the ability to do that. It's unfortunately there's everybody wants to do something special, and unfortunately there's not enough special spots to put them in there. I had another kid that was from up north who was telling me about how much more capable and prepared that officers are these days, the younger ones, and they're ready to be sergeants much faster than what they were. That there was no such thing as professional patrolmen anymore. And I kind of didn't know what to take. I didn't know how to take that at first, other than the fact that you've been here 10 minutes and now you want to be the chief. And I think that we do have a kind of a disconnect with the whole promotional thing. And I agree with you. I think that's something that we need to work on. And I think if we did have a clear-cut set of rules that we used over and over and over again, I think that would work better. I do think, in addition to that, I think when you affect someone's ability to get promoted, and they feel like that they're stuck, they're never going to go anywhere, I think that's what ends a lot of law enforcement careers early. When I went through the academy, back in the Stone Age, that's one of the things they said to us, which is, half of you guys won't be here in 5 years. And I don't know if that was true or not, but it seems, it seems pretty reasonable. I
And
know
still,
we had a kid from a local jurisdiction the other day. I'm not going to name it, but just basically said I think they maybe had a year in, and they were just like, I'm done. I don't want to do this. And I think that law enforcement leadership failed that person. I think that there's a lot of things that go into it. But I think that one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about what are some of the things that the South Carolina FOP does for mental health awareness for law officers in South Carolina,
well, in South Carolina and at the national level,
as well
we
as
have
national?
we have a wellness program, and it is headed up by a lady out of Connecticut named Sherry Rowan Martin. Sherry her ties are in South Carolina. She was actually on the state board
Oh, okay.
here for us, and now she's on the national board.
Do you have a number for her?
Yes, I do.
Okay, if you'll get that to us, we'll add it at the end of the video, or maybe your website or anything like that, or maybe a hotline or something like that. We could add. That'd be great. Okay.
But part of her background had been all along. She had been a psychology type major, and she's been head of this committee for some time now. And we recognize absolutely that there is a major issue. There are stigmas, there are issues, there are lots of things that go along with people seeking mental health or assistance with mental health. The issues that we've identified that we know are critical and we know are problems is the fact that if an officer seeks help, then sometimes they tend to be viewed as weaker, which is not the case at all. But more importantly, I think the problem comes with especially like PTSD and things of that nature, once an officer is identified with PTSD, and if it gets to the point that they have to retire because of it, then they're losing more than just a job. They're losing their identity. They're losing their rights under the Leosa Act. There are chiefs and sheriffs out there that are saying that, well, if you retired under PTSD, we're not going to give you your credentials. I see more officers.
Well, let me just say this: the chiefs and the sheriffs that do that to officers that legitimately have been diagnosed with PTSD. Let me just say this: you suck. You suck. I mean, not everybody deals with it the same way. I have a guy that I worked with for years that had a guy that blew his head off with a double barrel shotgun, like within a hand's distance of him. And I don't know what I would have done. I've seen some horrific stuff. I've been all over the world, and I've seen some horrific stuff. I've never seen anything like that, not within hand's distance. I mean, I've seen some bad stuff from a ways back, but nothing like where I could reach out and touch him while we were doing it. I don't know how I don't know how that guy gets up and manages to continue to do what he does every day and does it with a modicum of sanity, but he does, and God bless him. And if anybody has a right to be diagnosed with PTSD, that guy does. But he continues to soldier on, or whatever you want to call it, and God bless him for doing it. But there are some people that just are not mentally prepared to do that, and you'll never know what you're mentally prepared to do until you're in those footsteps. And to throw those guys and girls under the bus is just crazy. And I know if you look back 50 years ago, 60 years ago, for somebody who had shell shock or PTSD or whatever, they were malingering or whatever. That's just not true. It's just not true. I mean, I just that's once again, and I don't want to get off on a tangent too much, but honestly and truly, the sheriffs and the chiefs are doing that. You suck. You're not good people.
Well, it forces officers sometimes to choose between their job, their livelihood, their career, their identity, and seeking help.
Yeah, and that's why we have the crazy amount of suicides we're having. First of all, one is too many. Even one is not acceptable. Anything we can do to stop it, we need to do that. And we talked about this before. 228 officers last year in 2019 committed suicide. And in the first 10 months, we had 30 officers killed by firearms. That's crazy. That's crazy. We should be able to prevent that. We should, or at least, we need to try everything we can. Maybe we can't prevent it, but at the end of the day, when we lay our heads on the pillow, at least we should know that we've done everything we can. So let me ask you this, Terry. How have you managed so well?
I don't know. I honestly have no clue how. I think the one thing that helps me is short memory. It's just one of the sports terms that you've always.
Like a quarterback throwing an
That's
interception.
right.
You have a
You got
short
to
memory
forget
area.
about it as quickly as you can, and you got to move on. But no matter how short memory you are, there are things that are going to stick with you. And that, in the job that I do, you talk about the officers are on the street and they see a thing here. They see that car crash. They see the homicide. You know what? In the job that I'm at, I see every bit of it.
Oh, exactly. I was going to say,
You
death
see
every day.
every single one of those things. So it's really, I think the one thing is a matter of good peer counseling.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that we have that sixth sense of humor. You have it, we have it, everybody has it, where you laugh at things that are inappropriate you shouldn't laugh at, but you do. And
That's a release valve.
it is. And, laughter is just as much a sign of stress as other factors are.
I agree.
And,
100%.
I had somebody kind of argue me down one time whenever I said that out loud. I think you're wrong. I don't think I'm wrong at all. I think that's part of dealing with stress is through laughter. It's through crying. It's through every other emotion too. But how? A handful of close friends that I can talk very openly with, and they don't judge me.
Right.
And that's a big part of it.
Well, one of the things that I always did when I worked, and I still do, and we actually do this together. Actually, Daniel's going to put several pictures up around us as we're talking about this, which is we build ramps and we do things for people that can't afford them. In addition to that, for people who are handicapped, law enforcement if possible, others as well, and going out as a group and just retired officers, active duty officers, and just working together and just enjoying that fellowship. And not only are we enjoying the fellowship of us talking, telling stories, because that's what we do, but we're doing something to help someone else, and that is one of the great elixirs, if you will, that soothes my soul. I know, and I'm sure it does for all of y'all as well. So we just want to just thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today, Terry. You're a great guy. You're going to continue to do many great things in the future. We look forward to seeing the great things that the FOP nationwide is going to do, as well as the South Carolina chapter of the FOP here. But we appreciate you coming in, and thank you once again from CopBLue. And remember, the last thing, the most important thing, is hitting that clock and going home safe. Thank you very much from CopBLue.